Rev up your engines!
Well, it's official. Ford has killed the Ford Flex. They started in 2008, now they're not going to be making them anymore. Which is kind of interesting because Ford said they weren't going to be making any cars except the Mustang, but the Ford Flex is an SUV. Now, when they first came out in 2008, people either loved them or hate them. I kind of hated them. I thought they were the ugliest looking thing on the planet. But I had customers who bought them who thought they were lovely looking vehicles. So, as they say, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. It couldn't have been too beautiful because Ford isn't going to be making them anymore. Now, in 11 years, they only sold 296,000 of them, so they didn't sell many of that each year. So they weren't popular, and Ford just decided, we're not selling enough of these, so we'll ditch that. Even though it is an SUV, it was such an odd shape. And it turns out that, of course, earlier they sold more than they did later because there were, I guess, so many people that thought that odd shape is cool. But after a while, all the odd shaped people had already bought theirs that wanted them, and other people that didn't like them said, that's odd, I'm not going to buy it. So they didn't sell enough, and now it's next on the Ford Flex. Anthony Camp says, Scotty, I'm thinking about buying an '06 Jaguar XType with 160,000 miles for $2,000. Do you think it's a good buy? Well, it would be for the person selling it to you because that car's worth absolutely nothing. Those were one of the worst cars ever made, a 2006 Jaguar XType. Now, you know, they had some stuff in common with Ford. Ford owned them back then, but they were still made in England, and they're rolling piles of junk. I had one customer, she bought one, and she ran a trucking firm. So she had a lot of money, and she brought it to me because she'd taken it other places. Somebody told her about me, and I said, oh, you need this. She said, well, I replaced that. I said, replace it because I'm only going to keep the thing maybe another few months, and I'll sell it. And she did later on sell it. And I said, why did you buy this used Jaguar? She said, well, she said, I always wanted a Jaguar. I said, is it out of your system? She said, yes, it's out of my system now. I'll never buy another one. And she had a lot of money. She ran a trucking firm. She owned the thing. Even then, she was smart enough. She bought the car used for like $5,000, drove it for 3-4 years, and she ended up selling it to somebody for $3,000. So she got out real lucky on that one. Don't buy that thing. They are rolling piles of junk. Ozma says, hey Scotty, someone's selling an '01 Jeep Cherokee Sport with 77,000 miles on it for $5,000. What do you think? Now, that was back in 2001. The Jeeps were somewhat better made then, but they were still Chrysler products. I got a customer that bought that same exact vehicle with 75,000 miles, and he paid $1,500 for it, okay? And he drove it around for years, and he had some problems, but it wasn't too outrageous. That's way too much money for a used Jeep that you're getting absolutely no guarantee on. If you can get it cheaper and you like it, go right ahead, but $5,000, that's a ridiculous price for a 19-year-old Jeep. They just are not worth that much money. If you like it and a mechanic says it's okay, do have a mechanic check it. You can't trust anybody. But if he says it's a good vehicle, try to pay a whole bunch less because it's not worth $5,000 buying it with no guarantee that's 19 years old being a Chrysler product. All those have electric problems as they age, and you're going to get them if you do buy that vehicle at that age. It doesn't matter about the mileage. The electronics breaks down because of age. Wiring breaks down. The computers just break down from corrosion and the water vapor in the air. So don't pay too much for that if you're going to buy it. Night Nitro says, Scotty, I'm looking for a small hatchback car for my family. I've been looking at ones like the Honda Jazz and the Toyota Yaris. Out of those, I'd say get the Honda, get the Jazz, because the Toyota Yaris isn't a Toyota. It's made by Mazda. It's a Mazda car that's rebadged. Kind of crazy, and Toyota's been doing it lately with some of their models. I noticed that Toyota now is opening a factory in the United States. I think it's in Alabama. It's in one of the southern states. And it's a joint venture between Toyota and Mazda. And it's not like they're going to make Toyotas on one line and Mazdas on the other. They're going to make them all in the same factory on the same line. So they got something going on with Mazda. But the Mazdas aren't as good as Toyotas. So out of that one, get the Honda Jazz. You'll probably be happier with the Honda Jazz because you're not getting a Toyota when you're buying that. You're getting a Mazda. And Hondas are better than the Mazdas. John 54 says, I have a 2004 Saturn Ion. If you start it in the morning, it idles perfect, but as soon as it gets warm, it idles rough. When you have a car that starts and runs fine when it's cold, but when it warms up, starts idling rough, it's generally one of two things. Some type of a leak in the system, the fuel system, fuel pressure regulator, fuel injector that's dripping, because a cold engine needs extra fuel. So it'll run fine cold if it's getting a little bit too much fuel. But once the engine's warmed up, it has to be perfectly set up or it will idle poorly. This sounds counterintuitive, but race cars, They're set up to run extremely lean. That's why they idle like crap. But at high speeds, you want to have a leaner mixture, not a richer mixture. It kind of sounds weird, but that's how they work. So when your engine's warmed up, it likes to have a somewhat lean mixture going on to it. And if it's dripping, then it's going to idle like crap. Now, the other thing is, when it's running poorly, pressure test the fuel pump. Fuel pumps in all modern cars are electronic. So it could be that you start it up and the fuel pump runs fine, but it's electric. And after it runs a few minutes, it starts getting weak because it's a weak electric part. Just like, you know, you can have a broken toaster that it might make one piece of toast, but then you try again and it doesn't work right because it's wearing out and it can't build up heat after it did it one time. Same thing with a fuel pump. So when it does run poorly, pressure test the fuel pump to see if that's weak. Lotus 9 says, hi, from Mississauga, Ontario. Your advice on 2008 to 12 Audi S5 with a manual transmission, please. Oh, that's interesting. From Mississauga. The first time in my life I ever ate sushi was in Mississauga, Ontario. What a strange coincidence there. Audis are endless money pits. They just are. But that's a manual transmission. One of the biggest problems they have are their automatic transmissions. They're not long-lasting vehicles. They have horrendous resale values. Now, I know you live in Mississauga. In Canada, the car prices are higher. That's just how they are. The taxes you have and all that stuff, you just pay more for your vehicles. All Audis, as they age, become endless money pits for repair. Now, if you find one with low mileage, like 30,000 miles or something, it might be okay for another 40 or 50 before it starts completely falling apart. But do not pay much for used Audi. Being a manual, yes, better idea, but still, it's an Audi. The parts are outrageously expensive, and I'm sure in Mississauga they're even more outrageously expensive than they are here in Houston, and they're outrageously expensive here, so I'd think twice before I buy a used Audi. Alan Mancilla says, Scotty, I'd like to know if I can use lacquer thinner to clean the catalytic converter on my 2010 Ford Focus TDCi. No, don't. That's a diesel. The D stands for diesel. You cannot use anything like that in a diesel engine. Diesels work by extreme compression. If you put lacquer thinner in that, you'd blow the engine. It might even, I've seen them where they actually blew pieces off of the head when they had something like dumb enough as even putting regular gasoline in a diesel tank can do all kinds of damage with explosions. So no, that's only for gasoline engines, and as long as you diluted 1 part cleaner to 9 parts gasoline, it's perfectly okay. But in a diesel engine, no. Don't put anything in a diesel tank other than diesel fuel or fuel additives that say they are rated for diesel engines, like Redline diesel fuel cleaner. You can put that in. Don't use anything else but stuff that's made for diesels. Chris4487 says, Scotty, I'm looking at an 05 Toyota Sienna XLE as a daily driver with 160,000 miles for $4,000. Is this a deal? They're good vehicles, but that's no deal. I'll give you an idea. I had a customer that sold his Toyota Sienna, and his had 100,000 miles on it, and he sold it for $2,000 to this Hispanic guy that was using it for his lawnmower service. $4,000 is too much for a 15-year-old Sienna with 160,000 miles, especially since you say it's going to be a daily driver. Now, if it was going to be something like a secondary vehicle, it'd be okay and I'd try to pay less. But as a daily driver and 160,000 miles, I kind of stay clear from that. That's too many miles for a daily driver for that kind of money. Like I say, my customer sold his with 100,000 miles, and all he got for it was a couple of grand. So it's too much money. And a daily driver, 160,000 mile vehicle, I wouldn't really do something like that myself because it's too many miles. Something's going to break eventually. You're going to put a ton of mileage on it. I'd look for something with less mileage. Wilhelmina G says, my Ford Taurus gave me the P0340 code for camshaft position sensor. I changed the sensor, but it's still there. Help! You want to use an OEM sensor. You go buy to a discount auto parts store, buy the cheapest thing you can. A lot of times the Chinese stuff doesn't work out of the box. So make sure it's an OEM, original equipment. You don't have to go buy from the dealer, but there's lots of places that will sell the Ford Motorcraft sensors. If you put a OEM sensor on and the code stays, then either the wiring's bad, which you would see it's frayed or something, or more commonly, the timing chain in your engine, when it wears, then of course it's stretched out. Then the data that the cam sensor sends out is going to be off, because even though the sensor's working right, the chain is stretched, so it's going to be pointed in the wrong direction, and the computer's going to get this weird information and it thinks that the camshaft sensor's bad. If it's OEM sensor and it still does it, odds are you're going to need a whole timing chain set, which is a real job to put in on one of those V6 engines. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.